Good evening, everyone, dear SwissCham members, guests, and friends, dear members of the Italian Chamber, American Chamber, and Eurocham. Hi, everyone, welcome. After a very successful first webinar of this trilogy, end of January, I'm excited to see that our audience has further grown and become even more international for this topic. We have over 90 registrations for today's session from different continents. We have participants from Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia, Philippines, Switzerland, Italy, France, Romania, and even the US joining. Thank you all for taking time for this session tonight on this topic on the new reality of travel. For today's session, we are very privileged to have again 4 experts on our panel from various different backgrounds, from the hospitality industry, from airports, and technology partners. Our experts will share with you first-hand insights into the latest developments across the various stakeholders of the new travel ecosystem, which is changing on a daily basis, sharing with you innovations, expectations, and challenges they're facing in their daily journey. As you might be aware, Changi Airport has been voted the world's best airport again in 2020. This for the 8th consecutive year. Before this unprecedented global crisis hit all of us, Changi has processed 69 million passengers a year. Today, as you're all aware, it's a small percentage of that. It is therefore a special occasion to hear today from the Managing Director, Air Hub Development of the world's best airport, Mr. Lim Tiankiat himself, on initiatives that Changi Airport is launching to always stay one step ahead of other airports around the world, even in this time of a global pandemic. We are very excited to hear those insights. The session will be moderated again by Mira. She is a growth strategist at What If in Singapore, focusing on governments, aviation, travel, and transportation business. Outside her job, Mira is a co-founder of She Says in Singapore, championing for diversity and providing women with the network and support to grow. On behalf of the board of the Swiss Chamber of Commerce in Singapore, I would like to thank our esteemed industry experts on the panel tonight and our moderator for taking the time and share their insights into this new reality of travel. With this, I'm handing over to our moderator. Thank you, Mira.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, everyone, and thank you for calling in today to today's webinar, which is, as Chris mentioned, the second of our trilogy with the Swiss Chamber of Commerce in Singapore. Today's agenda will start with a general introduction by Rakesh, followed by a panel session, which will have Chinkat, Rakesh, Wei Lin, and Matt speaking to the key topic that we're looking at today, which is customer experience and airport operations. During that time, please do feel free to share any questions that you might have in the Q&A window, which we will be moderating and sharing with the panelists. To kick things off, I'd like to introduce Rakesh, who is the VP and General Manager for Asia Pacific at Travel Solutions Air at Sabre Corporation. Some background on Rakesh. In this role, Rakesh oversees airline relationships in the region, ensuring that Sabre meets their evolving retailing, distribution, and fulfillment needs. Together with his team, he connects airlines to thousands of travel agents, travel management companies, corporate travel departments through Sabre's global travel marketplace. He also works very closely with the global product and technology teams to deliver strategic solutions that drive higher revenue and deliver improved efficiencies for carriers in the region. So on that note, we'll pass it over to Rakesh to provide us with his introduction.
Thanks, Mira. Appreciate that. Can you see the slide, Mira?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. So first of all, let me welcome everybody. Good evening, and thanks Chris and Meera for the introduction. Sabre has been right in the pivotal of the travel ecosystem, and we connect all the travel businesses, whether it is the airlines, the hospitality business, or the agency business, where we provide the marketplace for airlines and the travel partners to conduct travel commerce. We also provide technology to all the airlines, whether it is for commercials and operation system. And as we sit today, all right, thank you. You will be aware that we have partners in the travel ecosystem, and that is hotels, agencies, and other travel partners. And most importantly, what we bring to the table is a marketplace. And as we move into this COVID environment, what is happening is globally, travel ecosystem is disrupted. And Sabre is, of course, not immune to that. We have been having significant challenges. But again, what do we really do? And why does these events of whether COVID-19 or other issues that happen in the marketplace impact us? And also, more importantly, what is really Sabre doing in the marketplace? First and foremost, are you guys seeing the slide, Chris and Meera?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So what does Sabre really do, right? So every minute, and I'm not talking every day or every year, every minute, Sabre supports about 62 million API calls. There are about 130,000 plus flights that are searched on Sabre. More than 3,500 messages are sent. 5,200 hotel rooms are shopped. And more than 400,000 air travel is booked every single minute on Sabre platform. So that gives you an idea as to where we sit and how pivotal it is for us to make sure that the travel ecosystem works seamlessly. In terms of volume of the business, there's about $120 billion of commerce that gets transacted on Sabre. And Sabre continues to invest more than $1 billion annually into technology for this travel ecosystem. Again, if I look at 2019 numbers, we supported about 1 billion trips that were booked in 2019. So typically we would see that a significant amount of bookings come through Sabre systems. What happened? 2019 was great. We had been doing quite well until 2019, and early part of 2020, we started seeing significant impact to the travel business. And we are showing here some graphs, which we recently also shared with our investors a couple of weeks back when we shared our full year results. What we notice is that the travel booking trends were very much in line with the COVID cases that we were seeing on a global basis. As the COVID cases increased, there were a number of countries which went into lockdown, whether it is from a country perspective or even within the country. Some of the domestic lockdowns came in, and even interstate lockdowns were getting implemented. And as the lockdowns were being implemented, we saw the travel essentially take a direct hit in terms of how people were traveling. And when I say travel, I would like to break it into three sections. One was the air travel, and that is what you see here. But then there's the hotel travel, which again, the hotel part of the business was actually picking up a little bit, because we saw in certain countries, whether it is Europe or US, there was a lot more travel that started happening in the second half of last year using cars and other private modes of transportation, and in some cases, even trains. So hotel booking started to sort of pop up much faster than air travel, as we saw in the last part of 2020. But what we really want to see is, everybody here has these questions, all of our customers have these questions, and the big questions are, when will recovery happen? How can we position ourselves to run our business for recovery and then the growth? But let me take the first question. When will the recovery happen? Well, nobody has the crystal ball, and everybody is in anticipation of the recovery to happen. One of the things we are supremely convinced that the recovery will happen. It's just a question of when. And what we have been seeing over the last year is there is a gradual increase and a recovery happening. And I'll talk a little bit more in terms of where are we really seeing these recovery points and what we see in terms of into the future. Importantly, it also boils down to is, how can we position ourselves to run the business post-recovery, right? So you get into recovery, what happens after the recovery? A lot of our travel partners are going to be struggling. A lot of technology providers are going to be struggling financially also as we go through significant downturn in the travel business. But then what happens is it also boils down to what exactly are we going to be doing in terms of investing to make sure that as we come out of this recovery, we are actually much stronger. Our business becomes future proof because we're going to have more of shocks as we go into the future. We've had shocks in the past. We've never had a shock of this significant nature in the recent past, but there is a likely scenario of such shocks happening again. It is important as we get out of this scenario, we want to make sure that we are well positioned. What we did for that was we essentially worked on a number of things, and I'll go through those items in a bit. But one of the key things for us was investing more in technology. We have a Google partnership, and that was signed actually right before COVID. Google has signed with each of these verticals, leaders of each of the verticals, a long-term sort of an engagement, a framework of innovation. And in the travel ecosystem, we have been chosen by Sabre, and we have been chosen by Google, and we chose Google also. It was a pretty good partnership where we have been investing to see how we actually can look into the future of travel and essentially prepare Sabre and, most importantly, all of our partners, whether it is agencies, airlines, hotels, to make sure that they are able to leapfrog some of the technology gaps that have been existing in the travel ecosystem for some time. The question boils down to is we talk about new normal, we talk about future normal, we talk about different variations of what is happening today and what will be happening tomorrow. The question fundamentally is what exactly is this industry going to be in future? Are we going to see a smaller industry? Is travel going to be different? Our business is going to start transacting more business online, either through Zoom or Microsoft Teams or what you may have. What exactly is going to happen with leisure travel, business travel, and importantly, if you are in the travel ecosystem, it is equally important to understand what are the products and services that you want to bring to the table so that you are making sure that you provide the services that the future traveler needs, and more importantly, that is sustainable. Some of the key trends that we've been seeing in the travel ecosystem, the first one is domestic travel. We are seeing the recovery of domestic travel much faster than international travel. In some markets, especially in Asia, if you look, the international travel is very limited. Most countries have some sort of lockdown when it comes to international travel, but a number of countries have significant domestic travel. So if I look at China, right now, China's domestic travel is back up. It's actually exceeding 100% of what it was in 2019. So the bounce is really, really strong. If I look at somebody like Vietnam, a country like Vietnam, we've seen the travel actually bounce back somewhere between 70 to 90%, depending on which week and how much of COVID cases and lockdowns are or are not in place domestically. We look at Thailand, Indonesia, the numbers are getting somewhere around 40 to 45, 50% in terms of the domestic travel. International travel, again, completely curtailed in all of these the countries. If I look at Australia, which has gone through a lot of ups and downs in terms of COVID cases and also opening and closing of borders within Australia itself, you would see that the market has been quite erratic in terms of how it has been performing. But domestic travel is definitely coming back. That gives us the indication that the travel will come back as restrictions get lifted. There is more confidence in the system for people to travel. There is an underlying urge for human to travel and to connect with each other. So that is definitely going to be there. What we see for now is safety first. So that's a very, very important aspect for travel. So cost is not necessarily a major consideration. Most of the travel that is happening now is not necessarily discretionary travel. It is either repatriation or is it critical business and so on and so forth, wherein more than the cost, the focus is on safety in terms of health safety. What are the procedures the airlines are taking, the hotels are taking, the airports are working through. So Changi has done a really good job, and I'm sure CK is going to talk about it. And you see more and more about airlines and hotels talking about their COVID cleanliness programs, and so on and so forth. The next one is leisure is recovering faster than business. A number of businesses are struggling, but more importantly, leisure is coming back faster for multiple reasons. One is the airfares are also on the flip side getting a lot cheaper, because you would see in domestic capacity is quite rampant, and the fares have come down in a lot of the domestic markets. And people have discretionary income that they're willing to spend. And there is really a concept of breaking free. You've been in lockdown, you want to go out, you want to travel. And that is why we see a lot of leisure travel actually coming back. Both, we are seeing that in terms of shopping. And what do I mean by shopping is people actually going and looking for trips to make, and also actual booking where people are actually making the bookings to travel. The next one is what we see is contactless travel. So we are seeing a lot more appetite for contactless travel at every place, right? So if you, again, whether it's at the airports, hotels, or airlines, they're looking at more and more of how limited contact one passenger could have with across through their journey, whether it is through check-in or any of those things. In many cases, the airlines are also restricting in terms of backpack printing. They're asking passengers to print their backpacks at home, or some contactless backpack printing, and so on and so forth. The next one is technology investment. Technology always drives efficiency in the short to medium to long term. And what we definitely see is a lot of the companies, whether it is in the travel ecosystem or otherwise, the investment in technology is continuing. As a matter of fact, we did more implementation of technology in 2020 than we did in later part of 2019. So there's been no slowdown in terms of implementation of technology. And I think there's multiple reasons for that. One reason is you had the manpower, you had the focus to implement technology. There was a need to implement some of these technologies for some time. And also, there has been an innovation. There has been, and as human beings, we've figured better ways of using all these remote technologies. And that's everybody across the world in order to deliver some of these solutions remotely, which earlier would have to be done more in person. So that's, again, a huge technology change investment that will continue to happen is what we see. The importance of travel agent, again, is something that is surfacing more and more as we see more data coming out. And that's because of some of the, I would say, challenges in order to actually understand where you can travel, what are the documentations required in order to travel. And these conditions are changing on a daily basis. People are looking for experts who can actually help you figure out what would be the quarantine requirement, what would be the requirements from a health perspective. Is there some sort of a vaccination required in order to travel, and so on and so forth. And what we see is into the future, a requirement of health-related aspects in the travel becoming part and parcel of every traveler, everybody in the travel ecosystem, and also the governments as they look at opening more of the borders. Last one, but not the least, which has been something that we've seen a trend even before COVID came about, is personalization. The travel industry is probably much far behind on personalization compared to most other industries. We all are so much used to using our handphones and how we get such personalized information, whether from a location mapping perspective or from our understanding of our preferences, and companies actually giving us offers or making our life easy on a day-to-day basis. In the travel business, that has been far behind, and that's what we see a big shift that is going to happen. Historically, we have always created segmentation in the travel business by saying business or leisure, or economy or first, or LCC or full service carrier, and so on and so forth. And what we see into the future is the segmentation will go down to a segmentation of one. So if we look at Mira, or you look at Chris, or you look at CK, or any of the panelists, or any one of you, how will an airline actually understand who you are and provide you with a solution, provide you with a package, a set of services which is very much personalized to you and priced for you. And that's the big shift that we're going to see into the future. And in there, you would have a better understanding of what is analytics, what is artificial intelligence, how artificial intelligence gets used because it's just not practically possible to look at all the permutation combination of billions of combinations of trips that get transacted. In terms of vaccination, right? So vaccination is bringing hope, and it is definitely, we see the vaccination rates varying across the world in different fashion. We do see certain countries far ahead in terms of vaccination. Some other countries are lagging behind, but by and large, whether it is individual governments or WHO or a number of other government and non-government bodies which have taken a very active role on vaccination, the belief is that as more and more people get vaccinated, the tendency to travel, or the confidence to travel, and also more importantly, the confidence to start opening the borders will increase. Different countries are at different levels of vaccination. Israel is probably right now leading. The data is maybe a week and a half old, and they're getting close to 80% in terms of getting their population vaccinated. And experts say that 80% you get close to herd immunity, and things do get to be better. So now we're going to have more data available in terms of what vaccination is actually doing in order to control this pandemic. Another important aspect that has been in the works for some time is something called Vaccination Passport, and there are different variations of that. Possibly what we do see is in the future, in some fashion, vaccination information or health information will start to get captured by the governments, by the travel ecosystem, the airlines and the hotels and so on and so forth, whereby they will be able to use that information and make sure your travel is smooth. And maybe also if there are some regulatory requirements that people need to be vaccinated to enter certain countries, such as visas and so on and so forth, similar to that, there could be some of those requirements coming in. Anytime a new rule comes in or regulation comes in or a requirement comes in, it is quite challenging for this entire travel ecosystem to essentially adopt that. I'll give one example, right? So e-ticket. Today we take e-ticket for granted, but it took the airline business more than a decade to move from paper tickets to e-ticket. One would have thought, you could do that in a few weeks and months. Now that was a long time back, so it took a much longer period. Nowadays, with technology and everything that is out there, things get moving faster. So as vaccination passports or something of that nature starts coming about, everybody in the travel ecosystem will have to start reacting in matter of weeks, not months and years. And as a matter of fact, IATA has an initiative, and Sabre has already incorporated that technology in our check-in solutions. Now, what is Sabre's audacious goal, right? So as we partner with Google, one of the biggest goal for us is by 2020-25, we believe that personalized travel will become very much a norm in the travel business. And we want to own that business. We want to be the leaders in there. And that's where this Google partnership comes in. Google is among the best in the world when it comes to artificial intelligence, machine learning, data insights, and so on and so forth. And it becomes very important for Sabre to work with somebody of that nature rather than reinventing the wheel, looking at some of the fundamental AI technology that Google would have already developed and successfully rolling out in the market for themselves. The question is, how do we take that technology and bring it into the travel business? And in the travel, Sabre just released Sabre Travel AI, and it is about helping personalization of travel. It is essentially taking underlying Google AI, bringing it into the travel world, and making sure that Sabre products actually start using travel AI going into the future. And then, of course, it will get extended to the community. And we would see more of these AI solutions coming into a variety of our systems, not just on the shopping and booking side of it, on the airline side, but it would be the airline, the hotels, the agency side of it, and also a lot of other technology that we provide to the airlines when it comes to optimization of where they should be flying, what aircraft they should be flying, how much should they be pricing their product at, how should they be assembling their product. I think that's where the key opportunity lies for everybody, for all of us as consumers. It is again something that's going to be hugely beneficial if the airline understands me as a person better and is able to assemble a set of services and provide me with the right price for those services. Also, what is happening today is a lot of offers that get created are static. So there is essentially a seat, there is a price for the seat, there is price for the excess baggage, there could be a price for a selection of the seat, there could be some price associated for excess lounge. I may have a frequent flyer program because of which I get certain benefits, but everything is by and large very static. And what we see into the future is a smart retailing. So airlines and the travel ecosystem, again, it's not just airlines, I'm taking airlines as an example, but it would be across the travel ecosystem where people can start, the companies can start becoming truly retailers, where they would be able to understand who their customers are and essentially package. It could be for an airline to package a hotel, package some land services, package anything associated with, even in today's world, people are talking about from a COVID perspective, if there is an option for us to package certain health products associated with the travel, how do I understand that and put all of these things together? So that's where I think the key difference is going to be into the future, is for airlines, hotels to understand their passengers or understand their customers much better and be able to meet their needs. Again, I go back to where travel has been always resilient. Travel will come back. It has. And we've gone through a number of shocks, whether it's in 70s, 80s, 90s, every decade, we've had some shock or other, but we would see that consistently that travel has actually come back with a resurgence, right? So people talk about revenge travel, and you may use different words, but at the end of the day, as borders open up, you would see more travel coming about. You will see more of the business getting conducted in person. But again, I want to be very cautious while I say this, that it's not that travel is going to come back literally next year. So what we see is 2021 is going to be very challenging. We see 2022 when travel starts to sort of rebound. You would have seen recently, Qantas just announced that international travel for Qantas would start somewhere around October timeframe. You would see more and more of airlines, governments, and so on and so forth announcing certain flight schedules or opening of the markets, and which may be further out than what we would like to be. But that's the reality we live in. We need to be careful about our health. We need to have all the mechanisms in place to make sure that we are safe, and at the same time, we are able to travel. So that is where what we see in terms of travel rebound. 22 onwards, we see travel coming back. 23, 24. By 24, we would expect most of the travel to come back. Again, another major shift that is going to happen for a lot of people on this call, it would be very interesting to know, is we talked about leisure coming back before business, and even within business, there would be some shift. A number of businesses are getting more proficient in conducting their business over Zoom and Skype and WebExes and Microsoft Teams and so on and so forth. And what we would notice is that some travel will permanently move away, will go away, will essentially be conducted through these technologies. But what would happen is, as the economies grow, as the travel business as a whole will continue to increase. And that's what we are definitely believing in. That's what history has shown us, and that's what humankind is. It's all about how we always bounce back. We are a resilient creature. So I'm fully confident in all of us. So with that, I will take a pause and hand it back to Mira, and we'll go into panel discussion. Mira, is that what next is?
Yes, that is. Thank you, Rakesh. So that was a really interesting walkthrough. And it's, I think, from one of the biggest takeaways that I got from the presentation was that companies have taken a digital first, a personalized experience or strategy, as well as a data-driven approach to their future and to their corporate strategy, have really excelled and been able to prepare for the future. So on that note, we move very simply now into our panel discussion, which is going to be a very interesting segment. We've got a great series of speakers who, starting with Chinkat Lim, who is the Managing Director for Air Hub Development at the world's best airport, Changi Airport. Chinkat is the MD of Air Hub Development at CAG. He oversees airline development, passenger development, Air Hub Strategy, and Cargo Logistics divisions. His key responsibilities are to partner with airlines, tourism, and logistics players to grow CAG's passenger and cargo traffic and network. Secondly, we also have Wei Lin, who is the president of Singapore's Hotel Association. She's also the senior vice president for hotels at Pontiac Land Group, a leading real estate development and investment company with over half a century of expertise and experience in luxury property development. The group has hospitality, office, retail, medical, and residential developments spanning Singapore, New York, Sydney, and the Maldives. In addition to this, she's also the president of the Singapore Hotel Association and is also, very interestingly, currently involved in the Tourism Recovery Action Task Force for Singapore. And she's a member of the emerging Stronger Task Force and the co-lead for enabling safe and innovative experiences in a COVID Environment Alliance under the EST. We also then have Matt Zato, who is the CEO of Travel Intelligence Partners, a hybrid consultancy platform for marketing tech companies entering the travel marketplace in Asia Pacific and the Middle East. Previously, he was the vice president of tourism at Adara, where he oversaw client relationships across Asia Pacific. He gained his digital marketing and travel industry experience working across 3 continents for TripAdvisor, Google, and one of my favorites, Tesla. So to kick things off, I think that following Rakesh's presentation, I think what everyone would love to hear from first is really from the speakers today about what do you see are some of the biggest concerns about the new future of travel. But before we get into all of the questions, I'd love to start off with asking a question to CK first, which I'm sure everyone of our attendees would be interested to know. From an airport operations perspective, Changi seems to have done very well at managing the new reality that we all live in. How have you enabled that seamless travel experience that Changi is renowned for pre-COVID and post?
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Mira. I think, first of all, thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate in this forum today. I think it's always a pleasure to exchange views with like-minded partners in the industry. I think one of the key challenges for COVID, like earlier Rakesh pointed out, is I think the increase in demand for contactless travel. So I think among the travelers is the top concern. I think the good thing for Changi is actually we embarked on this exercise even before COVID. I think the starting point was different. We didn't do it really, to be honest, for the pandemic reason, but also more because number one, there's an increased demand for self-service. So passengers are really quite keen on serving self-check-in and self-service kiosks. And also in terms of also manpower cost savings, because for Singapore, the manpower is quite high. So I think moving towards self-help platforms was already an initiative we had in mind. So for Terminal 4, for example, it was designed with that purpose that you can actually self-help and self-service and check through all the way to boarding. The use of technology was really encouraged then. I think once COVID started, we also further pivoted to make sure that whatever technology we have, we try to minimize and eventually we remove the contact features. So right now, from curbside all the way to boarding a flight is technically possible to do so without coming into contact. So for the check-in kiosk and all that, we adopted a technology where it is contactless, and also for the arrival, immigration, and departure, they move more towards using facial recognition, biometrics as measures. So I think that was something that we embarked on, and we had successfully delivered that. Yeah. So, and I think the other features that, like Rakesh pointed out, is frequent cleaning of the facilities. I think this one, we also have to do it hand in hand together with the airline partners, primarily SQ, and also with STB, which has also embarked on the SG Clean initiative. So I think together, we can't do it alone. We have to do it with the partners to emphasize that all parts of the touch points, we value the traveler safety, and additional reinforcement measures have been put in place. Thanks.
Thank you. So on that note, I would like to take the follow-up question to Wei Lin. So CK just talked about, new measures being put in place and new standards when it comes to the environment of the airport. When you look to the hospitality industry, how is it that the Singapore Hotel Association and the hospitality industry in Singapore has needed to shift whilst also keeping customers and employee experience in mind through this?
Thanks, Mira. So the Singapore Hotel Association represents 160 members, which is about 80% of the hotels here. And I think like everyone, we've had to adapt to the new demands of our customers as well as our staff. And one of the things that we have developed in Singapore, and this is a citywide initiative, is the SG Clean Accreditation. So this is a third-party hygiene and sanitation accreditation. They'll come down, they'll take a look at your sanitation protocols and what you do. And I think every hotel chain, we have a lot of major hotel chains here, they all have made health and safety one of their top key selling points. So there's a lot of time spent on cleaning, and then on top of that, sometimes they let the hotel room stay empty, and then they sell the hotel room again later. So there's definitely a lot of emphasis on health and safety. And I think like Rakesh mentioned, right now, cost is not so much an issue. People want to pay for safety and health. I think everyone is afraid of catching COVID, so they want to know that they are healthy and safe. The other thing that we do see actually, so many of our hotels in Singapore had to pivot to domestic demand, which typically is not that large, it's only 10%. We are a large international marketplace. So for the domestic demand, we try to create more different experiences for our guests. For example, bubble tea making or painting. I think hotels are trying to be very creative on how do we make that experience more special for the locals who don't see it as, it's just another staycation. So I think there's a lot of innovation and creativity amongst that, and understanding our customers who want new experiences.
That's helpful. It seems like at the very core of what everyone seems to be talking about at the moment is customer insights, knowing a bit more about what your new ecosystem of customers need, which, I would assume that MarTech actually plays a huge role in this. So Matt, from a MarTech perspective, have your clients started to use data and insights to shift to new products and services, and whilst creating new streams of revenue?
Yeah, it's been an interesting time in terms of shifting to new products and services, new streams of revenue, because largely during this time, the usual streams of revenue have been kind of shut off. But what's been interesting is that the downtime has really allowed companies with strong balance sheets to invest in their tech stack, future-proof themselves for when international travel does come back online. So I'd say that this has been a real opportunity for them to get their house in order, kind of set themselves up for the future. Particularly in the public sector, we've seen a lot of the tourism boards that I advise an appetite for analytics and travel intent data streams that they never really were looking for in the past. I think APAC has largely lagged behind Europe and North America in terms of data-driven strategy and looking at kind of a diverse set of data streams in order to make decisions. And this has been really front and center as soon as the pandemic hit. A lot of the data providers out there have been more than happy to share what they typically were selling at no cost to help their partners in trying times. I say that the big shift in terms of products and services has definitely been driven by the constraints of cross-border travel restrictions. You talk to some tourism organizations, and they've really moved away from international travel because it simply has been shut off, and they've come up with their own domestic strategies. STB with Singapore Rediscover, Tourism Australia with Holiday Here this year. Thailand had vouchers for locals, to move about the country. But really, when we look at the numbers, there's just no way for domestic travel to supplant the spend that international travel generates. And that holds true for just about every APAC market except for maybe Japan and China that have very robust domestic travel markets. So it's been especially difficult for APAC markets. The suffering's been more severe than we've seen in the US, where there's, they had a summer travel. It was in between lockdowns, same with Europe, but we really didn't get that opportunity here in Asia with so many countries taking a really kind of hard stance on restricting travel.
Yeah, which ties in really nicely, actually. And this is a question for all of our speakers, for a question that actually just came out in our Q&A. So British Prime Minister Boris Johnson just announced return to normality in June. Subsequently, travel bookings have gone up by 600%. Is that good or premature? I assume there should be rather a gradual growth instead of a boom. So what do you foresee this changing in terms of the way that businesses engage, and as well as any of the standards and expectations that are going to come through from agencies that you work with? Maybe we could start with Rakesh.
Sure. The first thing I would say is when you hear big numbers like 600%, you're starting off of a small base, because we have essentially dropped by somewhere between 50 to 80%, depending on different markets, in terms of the demand. Again, some of the bounce back is not 600% immediately in the short term for weeks. It's over a period of time. We would definitely need a level of confidence, right? Human beings need to understand that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Now, is it premature in terms of opening up the markets and talking about June recovery? I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but what I would say is it's always good to look forward to some positive aspects of that. But I want to be cautious also, because last year we did a lot of those start stops. So we thought that the market is going to improve. Airlines put their schedules out, and a couple of months later, things got worse and they had to be shut down. Even UK, every country is the same. Even UK had to go through a lot of sort of start stops. Again, June is quite far out, if you ask me. If you look at all of the travel trends right now that is happening, the booking cycles that we see on a global basis are in the range of about 3 to 4 weeks. So anything beyond that is going to be more challenging. People are more careful in terms of how to plan for it. Business travel definitely cannot be planned for like 4 or 5 months out. Maybe some exceptions, but by and large, business travel typically is planned within a week's time. That's what the average data shows on a global basis. In terms of travel agencies, again, that is where agencies actually do come into picture and become more relevant, where they are able to guide, whether it's leisure or business passengers, in order to essentially put together a package that would make sense. So is a gradual a growth better or a boom better? I would say definitely a boom is good, but it needs to be sustainable. That's very important. And I think the whole vaccination drive will give us a better view from a health perspective, how that whole COVID can be controlled. Again, we do have globally the infrastructure to handle the boom, to manage all of these travel, whether it is from an airline capacity perspective or hotel room perspective or airports and so on and so forth. So the capacity and infrastructure exists, but it's also the level of health, safety, and confidence that governments and all of us need to have.
CK, Wei Lin, any thoughts? Matt?
Yeah, I think that data just shows that there is a pent-up demand, that really it's a function of supply. It's a function of accessibility. I think that in a lot of markets, you look at the US, you look at the UK, I don't think that they're as fearful about catching the virus. The vaccination drives have made big strides forward in comparison to out here in Asia. That it's really a function of countries signing, whether it's bilateral agreements or fully opening up, that we'll see travel really come back. So I don't think it's a demand issue. Of course, their safety is always going to be a concern, but I think that with the vaccine is going to subside quickly.
Well, when we look to CK here, Changi Connect is a new service or product that's been announced by Changi Airport. It's a world first. And it really goes back to the topic around business travel, which has been mentioned a couple of times. When we think about business travel, it isn't really about turning up in the city for a meeting, a week, making the plan a week before, but it's really about experiencing the city, and in this case, Singapore. Maybe if you could tell us a little bit about Changi Connect, but more importantly, how are you working with ecosystem partners to enable this experience? But with the way that business travel has traditionally run, how is Changi Connect connecting to that, enabling that experience?
Yeah, thanks. Changi Connects is one of the several different experiments that Singapore is doing. I think on its own, one could argue that it wouldn't move the needle. It's only a few hundred rooms, so it's not going to. You can't expect also all of the hotels under Waylin's association to be able to transform to that. But I think in itself, it's a very interesting experiment to show that I think there are certain needs for business passenger. Of course, we mentioned earlier that I think the last 12 months has changed the way many businesses are done. They realize that many of the internal meetings can actually be done with Zoom. There will be some impact on business travel, but there is still different kinds of demands on signing a deal, on assessing your partners, doing due diligence, clinching a deal. For now, people don't find it. They don't see the impact because all your competitors are not moving, right? So all your competitors are like us sitting in the room and doing Zoom calls. But I think come the time where if your competitor could then travel to do a due diligence on a startup while you stay at home, I think those pressures will build up and some of the travel will come back. So the Changi Connects at Changi is an experiment also. I think is to prove that we want to restart travel, business travel in a safe manner. And I think based on talking to the operators of the facility, we already find that there are innovative companies trying to take advantage of this facility, which is like the key challenge for the impeded travel is one of the key challenges is the quarantine period, where you need to stay in a quarantine facility. You can't come into contact with people, ranging from 7 to 14 to even 21 days in certain countries. So I think this facility removes the need for that. Although you can do meetings, boardrooms, they have some pretty nice boardrooms there. Of course, you have to conduct a meeting behind a perplex glass facility. So, but I think it still meets the need. I think it's similar to that. There are other experiments that we have been doing. So in the task force that Waylin leads for Emerging Stronger, we have actually done several protocols. One was for MICE Travel, the Travel Revive that was conducted last year. One of the first few MICE events that has the international audience. We actually worked out a safety protocol for where people, like you rightly mentioned, when they attend a conference, they would like to network with people and also visit the city and do some leisure at the site as well. So I think those protocols were worked out last year to do that. And I think it dovetails quite strongly to your point about working across the ecosystem. So that was the task force is actually a public-private task force. It involves, it has representation from the tourism organizations, from hotel groups, authorities, health authorities, and we come together and we share each other's concerns and then worked out procedures that can help restart travel. So I think that kind of partnership and platform is quite important. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like I think in pre-COVID, it was very government agencies like health never really took a heavy presence or role in the definition of how the travel industry was going to grow or setting new standards of governance. But that barrier has now really blended. So we're looking at immigration, healthcare, the movement of people, as well as infrastructure. So I think a number of us, CK has just mentioned it as well, that Waylin's actually been is on a number of task force working with the Singapore government. Singapore has become a gold standard in a way of how cities should manage COVID as well as movement and travel. So Waylin, would you be able to provide us with some background on what these task forces are and how the Singapore Hotel Association yourself are involved in driving these new purposes?
Thanks, Mira. So the Emerging Stronger Task Force was formed last year in really the depths of COVID to see how we as an economy, as a country, could come together to solve this problem, because I think typically government usually has the answers, right? They set regulations, they help, but during COVID, things changed so much. Every day, every week was different. So from our perspective, I guess the good thing was that we all came together from both private as well as public. We came together and said, how are we going to crack this? There are other alliances that were formed, for example, EduTech, but travel was one that I co-lead with Lee Xiaohyang from Changi Airport as well. With that, we are really trying to see how we can restart travel. And we chose MICE as an experiment because it brought together both leisure as well as business. And at that time, really in March, that seemed like the most, having like 1,000 people event seemed like the most ridiculous thing for us here, right? Happy to say that it occurred in November and provided a good template. I mean, we had cohorting, we trialed a few different things, and through that, we learned how we could keep travelers safe. And then with that, we've also ended up being able to have other events in Singapore as well. So for example, the Shangri-La Dialogue is occurring, as well as the World Economic Forum. So I guess in Singapore, that's because we're so small, we all have to come together to see how we can come up with creative solutions to a problem.
Thank you. So I'm going to jump to our Q&A again. We've got a couple more questions that have popped up. So one of the questions is around Asia, the US and Latin America. So there seem to be when you look at the US and Latin America, there's obviously been surges and decreases in the number of cases and uncertainty around how local government is managing it. To our speakers, the question is, when you look to Asia, do you see that the current state in these different countries, as well as the restrictions around travel that exist there, are going to continue to influence the way private businesses react to allowing travelers from different locations to enter their premises? Any thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll probably get started just to provide some data. Definitely from a numbers perspective, between North America, Latin America, Europe, and Asia, the recovery is the least in Asia. I mean, I'm excluding China out with the domestic, where they have done extremely well. But by and large, in terms of international travel, Asia is far, far behind in terms of recovery. So that's one aspect of that. The question is into the future. At this point, based on the government's opening the borders, will definitely make the difference, because even if today the businesses want to actually start working together and interact and travel, that is still a huge challenge, and you can't do that. Simple as that if the borders are not open. And that's where it all fundamentally goes down to, is in Asia, you've got a lot of smaller countries. So even, for example, if you look at Singapore, small country, there's no domestic travel, essentially from a flight perspective. And even if you want to go to Malaysia or Indonesia, you would definitely need to have borders open up. You just cross half an hour of flight or an hour of flight, you get into a different country. So there are a lot more countries that need to work together in order to open up. So there's a lot more challenging situation in Asia.
Okay. There is another question here, and I think that this might be directed more to Wei Lin. How do you see the future of Airbnb and home rentals growing or declining over the growth of hotels?
So in Singapore, actually, there are restrictions on home rentals. So it is quite difficult to rent an apartment for a day in Singapore because land here is very scarce. So the use is very much controlled. But I also do see that, especially now during COVID, there's so much emphasis on quality and control that people would prefer to go with a trusted brand as opposed to Airbnb is you can have very good experiences or very bad ones, right? And given limited time, the cost of travel is going to increase because there's limited flights. People really want to make sure that when they do go away or they do check into a hotel, that they get what they are looking for.
Thank you. We have another question from Hanson. This is around employees. So payroll is one of the biggest cost items for a business, and it's difficult to try and retain as many employees as possible when the future of travel is so uncertain. For small business owners, this is to CK as well as Wei Lin. Do you have any recommendations on managing people and HR planning, and how have you managed your employees, and how's the Hotel Association giving recommendations to small medium businesses in a time like this? So maybe we'll start with CK.
Yeah, I think a very relevant question. I think in a time where I think for airports and airlines, I think where for some of those airports and airlines where their businesses are disrupted quite severely, then they have to look at cost-cutting measures and how best to do that, right? So I think in Singapore, the fortunate thing is that government has chipped in with a job support scheme. I think especially for emphasized for aviation. So I think that has helped. There's also a lot of new work that is started that is a bit non-traditional. We end up forming project teams and task force to do that traditionally we wouldn't do, right? So like you mentioned earlier, pre-COVID, my day job was working with airlines to get more flights and passenger. So recently, some of the projects we're working on together with as part of the task force was I was working very closely with the government, Singapore Tourism Board, to create or to develop an inbound COVID insurance product, because we found that was one of the friction that is in place. I mean, there are not adequate enough such products that are in the market. So we put together a project team to do that. We are not experts in insurance, but we leverage on the insurers and the Insurers Association to do that. So I think during this time, I keep telling my employees, don't waste your time. I think while your main job is disrupted, let's pivot and look at other areas where you can add value, but you must stay nimble. People must not be choosy and stay nimble. At the same time, I think it's a good chance to pick up new skills. So either under the free trainings or the TED Talks or skills development training, I think many of the staff are now learning digital skills and all that, which are very timely during this period. So I think no easy solution, because the people's jobs are being threatened, the traditional work is being disrupted. But I think for the staff who are, we have to emphasize to them to stay motivated, pick up new skills, and pivot to new areas where your expertise could be put to use, and pick up some new skills. So I think those are how we have been internally doing to relate to our staff. Yeah, thanks.
Yes, I think Singapore has been, we've been very lucky that we've had the support from the government. So we were pretty much able to safeguard a lot of jobs last year. But not just from job support, we've also sent a lot of staff for training, and that is through government support as well, but also through other creative ways. So for example, right now the sales staff probably is not as busy. So, but our F&B actually is quite busy because that's a domestic market. So we do put quite a few salespeople in the F&B department, where they have to perhaps serve guests, or maybe they can cut things in the kitchen. So there's a lot of cross deployment, and I think the employees just have to have a very open mind, and many do, to sort of in this moment to do different things as well. And we've actually redeployed some of our staff to other businesses who are doing well. So just for temporary movement, because at the end of the day, for a hotel, really talent, the key thing is about service, and service depends on people. So we also do want to try to keep our people as much as possible, because talent is so scarce.
No, that's really insightful. I think I want to, just on the back of this question, I have a question to Matt and Rakesh. One of the things that we're talking about right now is obviously the employee, but on the point about the SMB, one of the things that a lot of small businesses need to think about as well is following what is the dip. How do we prepare a business for recovery and then for growth? Because that's a necessity. So from both of your perspectives, how do you think that businesses not just in Singapore, because we've been lucky to get the government grants in Singapore, but in the region, How can businesses prepare for the future, keeping recovery and growth as the cornerstones?
I'll get started. So that's a very excellent question. And the first thing I would say is during recovery period, it's going to be troublesome. It is not an easy path. And unfortunately, it's a very long journey. We all expected it to be in 3 to 4 months to be out of COVID. It's now 1 year and we are still grappling with the challenges. So it's very important to realize that there's no silver bullet that's going to change things overnight. This is the time when you need to make sure your balance sheet is good. You need to make sure you're making investments into the future. You need to look at diversifying your revenue streams also, as CK and also earlier mentioned. This is very important. So because the recovery is going to take multi-year. The second thing is in terms of employee training. That's very important. As you look at multiple streams of revenue, you need to get your employees energized and trained to essentially go after that. And to the core of all of this, essentially, not that I'm representing a technology company, but for all of us, technology becomes a very critical player because technology brings in 2-3 things. One, it reduces the cost of operation, it improves the efficiency, and it also makes us nimble to handle any of these such crises into the future and look for new revenue streams fundamentally. So look at improving your business process, look at improving on your technology, look at improving on your skill set that you have within your organization. And most importantly, there will be some tough decisions that a lot of companies will have to make. Let's not shy away from that. You know, a lot of governments have been really generous, but they can't be generous forever. So there are some tough decisions to be made. But it's all about looking into the future. The future is bright. We do see overall economies starting to sort of pop in different areas. Look for different revenue streams and invest into those.
Yeah, I think Rakesh is spot on. It's making the right investments now. As we're all preparing for the rebound and for things to open up, it's making the right investments. You look at the behavioral change that we've seen during, or because of the lockdown, the shift to e-commerce. Well, these online travel agencies have not really realized that yet because travel was not an available e-commerce product. And I think that when that does come back online, we'll see these behaviors kind of trickle over into travel. And in my world of advertising and MarTech, the biggest need right now is for travel and tourism businesses to really future-proof their marketing strategy. It's not just that they've got this opportunity with this lull in the industry, is that there's big changes happening with online marketing. So the deprecation of third-party cookies, which is what allows brands to kind of measure the effectiveness of their online advertising investments, being able to understand the customer's behavior. Really moving forward, it's going to be about how do we operate in a privacy compliant way and understand our customers better. We're not going to be able to access third-party data sets in the way that we used to. So when it comes down to it, with them coming to all of our touch points, be it online or in person at the front desk, are we collecting that crucial data and building a singular view of the customer? Right now, if you've got really any travel brand, they're building their entire strategy based on really their entire communication strategy, acquisition, comms and retention is based on a limited view of the customer. And in this new world, there's going to be big investments made into customer data platforms, which essentially is going to give them this data layer that sits between all of the customer data sets, like their CRM, like the website, the contact center, loyalty, to really be able to deliver personalized and customized experiences for the traveler. So that's going to be a big thing moving into the future. Yeah, and everything Rakesh said about this shift to an investment in digital digital assets. This is going to be huge going forward. So now is the time to make them.
Do you think, are there any specific brands or businesses from around the world that really stand out as a best practice for what you just described?
Well, I would say that in the customer data platform space, I would say that Telium and Segment are two two big players. You'll have Oracle and Adobe, who are traditionally in the DMP, the data management platform space, start to move into kind of CDP because of kind of this new era. But yeah, I would say that those are the two ones that really operate a true CDP, and third-party cookie deprecation is happening next year, so there's not much time, and there's a real sense of urgency that companies needs to act now and kind of get the house sorted before really they're up against the wall and the change is implemented.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Almost there are so many new realities that I guess the world is needing to deal with when it comes to a COVID environment and ecosystem, whilst also keeping with new compliance and new standards that are constantly being released. There are so many things that are happening at the same time. I mean, to all of our speakers, I know this was something that we talked about yesterday very briefly, but this is a new reality. Do you all think that this is something that all of your businesses need to shift towards, or do you think that this is just a bump in the road?
I would say it's transitional. So this is not the new reality. The new reality is yet to come. We are in the transition phase, but again, it will not be back to what it was in 2019. So that's very important to realize. There would be some significant shifts that's happening, as what Matthew said and what Whelan and CK have been saying. We are also seeing that in our business. The new reality is yet to come. That's where our investment is going into the technology. Again, one of the other thing is picking up monies in the market has been reasonably cheap right now. And a lot of businesses have started raising cash and capital to make sure that they actually weather the storm and actually make the investment. So if you look at Singapore Airlines is again a very good example where one of the initial things they did was improve their balance sheet so that they can essentially invest into the future. Sabre did exactly the same thing. COVID hit March, April, May. We essentially made sure we went and fixed our balance sheet so that next future years, we are pretty well covered to make those investments. So that's the key thing is what I would say.
Just adding on, I think there are also some no regrets moves. So I think COVID, some of the trends, the outcome is still too hard to read, but some of it was just super speeding existing trends. So like for example, for Changi, even before COVID, we had started our own e-commerce platform because for Changi, I think the duty-free shopping has always been a key revenue source for us. But we realized that even back then, before COVID, I think e-commerce is very important. And we have a iShop Changi website that we've been running for some time. I think COVID just further accelerated the development there. And yet we see the future a bit mixed. We see an omni-channel kind of future because we have the real estate. So I think the shoppers will still want to come just after they check in. There is still a very strong demand for shopping. So they would order their essential shopping, the Johnny Walker or the Shiseidos before taking the flight, pick it up, and then buy some more when they are there and load up some more. So we see the omni-channel that's developing. So things like this is a no regret move for us to accelerate our e-commerce development during this pandemic. So this is a good time for us to speed up some of the efforts that we were already doing because we think that is a no regret. I think things is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I think there's a quote that's attributed to Lenin that it essentially says, years can go by and seemingly nothing happens, but then a decade can happen in a matter of a few weeks. And I think that that's what we've seen, that things that are discretionary have become very discretionary. Things that have become essential are very essential. And so we definitely skew to the more discretionary side. But yeah, I think that a lot of these, this transition, a lot of these elements are here to stay. It's just been an accelerant, really.
Well, my view always for travel is that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And I think everyone, if they know, as long as the borders are open and you're vaccinated, I've done a lot of surveys. Everyone was like, what's the first thing you're going to do? They're like, I'm going to jump on a flight and go on a holiday, much deserved holiday. So I think right now constraint is still very much controlled because of public health. Once that is under control, I do see it pretty going back to normal. Yes, of course, we would have improvements in productivity, more the contactless, seamless experiences. I think those are here to stay. But just looking at 9/11 at
Oh, I think we might have some technical difficulties. Well, I think we'll keep moving for the moment. So CK, a question has come in directly to you just on the travel retail point. Oh, Wayland's back. So maybe we'll just let Wayland finish up.
Sorry about that. Actually, I was almost done with that. With just that, I do think that travel will bounce back, and that Rakesh's chart was very, very encouraging.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll look to China for a little bit of inspiration and positivity on the bounce back. So CK, there's a question that's come to you just on the point of travel retail. So with Changi Airport, how is travel retail coping in the new reality? And what strategies, and let's assume beyond the government grants, have been used to help the industry during this challenging time?
We operate a big travel retail operation. So I think like many of the malls in Singapore as well, we gave quite substantial rebates to our tenants to support them to tide over these times. So I think it has brought us closer to the tenants to see that, hey, can we work together to tap some new segments? So like I mentioned earlier, the e-commerce is one area where in the past, we also layered on e-commerce as another means to help the current tenants. So I think leveraging on the current pandemic, we also see that more demand from the tenants wanting to come on board this platform together with us. We have also pivoted to, we also started a new food delivery service that helps deliver food for the restaurants in the Changi ecosystem to people. So it's a win-win, development that we as a landlord, we provide to them. So I think this in a crisis is don't waste a crisis. So it's a good chance for us to work even closer together with the partners. And when we go through this, I think we'll all appreciate the efforts that we bring together with the tenants.
Thank you. So I guess maybe we'll go back to Rakesh for a moment. Looking to China and the markets where travel has commenced, when it comes to business recovery and profitability, are there any specific businesses or organizations that you see in Singapore and ASEAN who've really been first movers when it comes to thinking about growth and recovery?
So a number of, actually from an airline perspective, a number of airlines have started planning for growth. As they also anticipate that some of their competition will probably struggle. So this is where those who have had a good balance sheet and those who are able to negotiate some of the contracts with their existing, whether it's aircraft lessors or across the board, are actually positioning where they are doing this trade where they're negotiating and saying, if you're willing to take a haircut now, I'm willing to commit to a future significant growth opportunity for myself and also for my partners. So essentially that kind of a conversation is quite rampant. A number of entities are actually working through that. So that's one part of it. The second part is it's also very important to realize right now, it will be extremely difficult for any airline to really make money because fundamentally your costs are high. They're not going to go away. You have significant capacity right now in place. You can't just get rid of capacity overnight or add capacity overnight. So in terms of some of the profitability in the short term is going to be quite challenging. But the airlines that have been doing quite well in the run up to the COVID continuously invest into the future. So we are seeing, as a matter of fact, a significant investment, not only in the technology, but also in their business strategy to talk about growth. So a number of these guys are looking at double-digit growth as soon as the markets start to open up. So starting 2020. So that's where it is. What we have not seen in the market yet is a lot of businesses going out, right? So in terms of airline bankruptcies or airline shutting down, there have been few that have happened across APAC, but the number is still quite small. So there could be some consolidation that could happen. There could be some more casualties, unfortunately, that could happen if this pandemic continues, and that stresses the balance sheets. In which case, the other companies are looking and saying, how do I actually step in and grow? One example I'll take, which is quite out in the public, is Rex in Australia. It was a regional carrier, did not operate the prime routes of Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne. What has happened is, which is quite surprising, is during COVID, as a matter of fact, they put together this business plan and actually got narrow body and have announced and will be starting to fly these routes and targeting both leisure and business passengers. So one would think that was typically Virgin Australia, Jetstar, and Qantas's primary strength. Now you're seeing more and more of new airlines also getting started, right? This is interesting because on one side, we say all the airlines are stressed. I do see a number of airline startups who are coming to us and talking about reservation systems and so on and so forth. They are looking at starting an airline sometime this year because they look at it and say, hey, this is a prime opportunity for me to actually get into this business because I would walk in with a clean balance sheet. And if I have the right investors, the future growth is there. How do I go about capturing that? So you've got a lot of opportunities, and new entrants as well as existing entrants are looking at those opportunities. So in every crisis, look for the opportunity, and that's what a number of them are doing.
Just to add to Rakesh, I think for the airport, for Changi, I think, and for many airlines as well, I think cargo is an interesting business. I think we are still below the level of pre-COVID, but I think there is enough opportunities in cargo. So this over the last 12 months, actually, for Changi Airport, we actually brought in 4 or 5 new cargo freighter operation. So there are pockets of opportunities that are happening. That just got to use it. I mean, we don't know how long this thing will be. I think we can't wait. We can't even wait for a vaccine to be totally disseminated because you don't know how long that will take. But in the meantime, look for opportunities and stay nimble, like what Rakesh mentioned. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you so much to our speakers for being part of today's panel. I think that was a really interesting view, and it was fantastic to hear from a customer and insights perspective how it is that businesses should engage in different ways, as well as hearing from some insights around what we're seeing globally and regionally around travel movements and patterns. And it was really insightful to also hear from CK and Wei Lin around what's actually happening in Singapore from a task force level, the impact of the new government grants, and the way that locally Singapore is moving ahead into the future. So thank you for your time today on today's panel.
Thank you, Meera. It was a pleasure. And really thanks to all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thanks.
Thank you, Meera. Thank you, Swiss Cham. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
everyone.
So thank you for attending today's webinar. Just to let you know, the third webinar will be occurring soon, and we will be sharing details via the Swiss Cham social media channels. But you can expect it to run on the 25th of March at the same time, and we expect to have another exciting set of panelists. Thank you very much again to Rakesh, Matt, Wei Lin, and CK, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Bye.